Scooby Dooby Doo. Just one of many shows I watched as a kid that I had no idea was old as sin, but unlike shows like Top Cat and Wacky Races, I should do a Top Cat video. It got like a million reboots, all of varying quality. I recently got reminded of some of the classic monsters from Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And I decided to go back and give the show a rewatch, or at least some episodes. 13. And wow, this show is kinda different from how I remember it, which I suppose is understandable for a TV show with 13 reboots and over 50 movies. Some things are bound to change. From the plot to the characters, there have been a lot of mutations in the style and portrayal and even perception. So think of this as me taking an opportunity to go back and see where it all started, as well as what may be different from my personal thoughts and preconceptions on this show. Spoilers for several episodes of this 50-year-old TV show. Also, I didn't watch every episode, just the ones with villains I wanted to see again, keep that in mind. And this is only going to be looking at episodes from the original 1969 to 1970 run, not the sort of season 3 that was added like 9 years later. To be honest, this show wouldn't hold up to the usual level of scrutiny I practice on this channel. Then again, many shows I find myself enjoying also make for great carving fodder for their flaws. I mean, the first episode has 2 full moons that happened on 2 consecutive nights just to adhere to a legend that wasn't even true because it was just a guy in a costume. But speaking of the first episode, there's something funny I realized about it and several like it, and that's how the whole dressing up like a monster thing actually relates to the gang. Sure, the Black Knight disguise was used to get the drop on someone previously, but the criminal in that episode had no intention of dressing up in it and chasing people around until a bunch of kids broke into the museum looking for clues. And then when you think about it, you start to wonder why he didn't just come as himself and kick them out because he works there. But that raises the oft-asked question of what exactly was he even going to do if he caught the kids as the Black Knight exactly. Even one of my favorite original villains, the Puppet Master, was created specifically to scare the gang off when they began sniffing around a counterfeiting operation. Actually, when I lay this all together, it seems like some of these villains were just planning to just straight up kill them. Maybe. And that's to say nothing of when the point of dressing up like a monster is to scare people into not coming close to a place, and all that does is attract a bunch of crazy teenagers who, despite being scared of you enough to run away on sight, still want to stick around to figure out what's going on. A lot of these guys may be running after the gang, roaring and making growling sounds, but if you really think about it, they're definitely panicking on the inside. Because really, I ask again, what exactly would they do if they caught 4 teenagers and a dog? Except maybe kill them. And even then, could they win that fight? Maybe it's this confusion that makes it so easy for them to fall for Shaggy and Scooby's tricks. Huh? Wait, aren't they supposed to be running from me? They can see that I'm a wolfman, right? Am I not wearing the costume? I should be. Wait a minute, I am wearing the costume. Speaking of the gang, the show's a lot more concentrated in one place than I remember. While they do a lot of driving around to exotic locations, more than a few episodes take place, or at least start, in the city that they live in. But beyond that, what I find the most interesting is the structure of these episodes. They weren't really about the question of who did it. Even children would eventually catch on to the fact that it's probably someone we've met. And many of these episodes only have us meet one person it could possibly be. Except the Space Cook, where the bad guy is someone we've never seen before. Though season 2 notably gives us a wider range of suspects it could possibly be, and even the first episode of season 2 is actually about a red herring meant to trick people into thinking the criminal is one person instead of the other. Unfortunately, the criminal just didn't take into account that the gang would actually set up a trap to physically catch him while he's in the costume. On my rewatches, the fun question wasn't who, but what. Specifically, what the hell is going on? The mysteries are more focused on trying to figure out what's causing strange phenomenon than anything to do with the bad guy. I mean, in episode 1, the gang doesn't even get chased by the Black Knight until we're like 15 minutes in, at which point they've already pretty much solved the mystery. And there are strange phenomenon. A lot of episodes usually begin with something to hook the gang and the audience with a question of how or why. Usually why. Why was there an empty suit of armor in an abandoned truck? How is this man growing so old so fast? Why are there glowing footprints on the farm? Is that a spaceship? To me, the quintessential example of this kind of plot structure is the episode Foul Play in Funland. It's full of all sorts of strange happenings as the gang try to figure out what's going on in this amusement park that seems to be walking by itself in the middle of the night. But this ties into something else about the show. While I can't say it isn't about the mysteries, there are a lot more comedy-based antics than I expected. While watching it, I figured about 40% of the episode is actually directly about the mystery, and the rest is just the gang messing around trying to make the audience laugh. While I wouldn't call Scooby-Doo a revolutionary work of art, I can at least note that the writers knew how to hook the audience on its concepts, mixing endearing comedic moments with confusing and sometimes even scary moments attached to colorful monsters. And of course, there's also the matter of the time period the show is set in, specifically tropes that are quite problematic in today's environment in regard to the use of other cultures and stereotypes. To keep it brief, I think the use of cultural myths and legends is fine as long as it's treated with at least the same amount of respect other episodes get and they don't do anything racist.
Welcome to Shag's and Scooby's haunted Chinese restaurant, the place where the ghosts eat the most.
Yeah, like that. But consider this. Look at the Indian witch doctor and really think about this plotline. It's a white guy in the late 1960s trying to scare off a bunch of people using Native American legends and stereotypes. Thinking about any inconsistencies and prejudices from this perspective becomes morbidly hilarious. But enough about the plot and structure, let's look at the characters. Because remember, this is the original incarnation of the Scooby Gang. So let's start with the most iconic characters, Scooby and Shaggy. As I said, a lot of this show is dedicated to comedic antics, and that section is pretty much carried by these two, which is why they are so iconic as the cowardly mascots. Also, Shaggy has apparently always been an athlete, specifically he started out as a gymnast. It's not just a joke about how much stamina he has to run away from monsters that was created in later iterations. However, I couldn't help but notice that, for all their fear, they were just as into solving mysteries as the rest of the gang. Sure, they'd need the occasional Scooby snack to get directly involved with possible danger, but when they stumbled upon strange phenomenon, they sometimes also felt the need to figure out what was going on and investigate, which honestly makes sense as to why they keep following Fred, Velma and Daphne around. Speaking of the oft-forgotten trio, it's no secret that it's pretty widely agreed that they didn't have much personality at first. Oh, there was something to latch onto. Velma was the nerd. There's enough reference to school lives to piece together that Daphne was the popular girl, and Fred. Well, here's something about Fred I think may reflect his journey through the decades. I've noticed that there seems to be a question over Fred's initial status as leader of the group. Was he actually the leader, or did we just assume he was because he drove them everywhere? But going back to watch the original show, yeah, Fred was very much the leader. And you know what? I'd even say he was good at it. Did his plans always work? Not in a comedic Saturday morning cartoon, they don't. Were they usually good plans? Some weren't if you apply real world logic to them, but within the confines of their universe, generally. You get the sense that he has a real understanding for how to best use everyone's talent, and he's always the one coming up with ideas and strategies to get them out of jams or turn situations around on their opponents. He doesn't get it 100% right all the time, but he's the one who's stepping up to lead, and he's good enough at it that I can see why they are still alive. But this leads me to my hypothesis, because it feels like as Fred is given more and more character to make him more entertaining to the audience in later iterations, his effectiveness as a leader is conversely reduced. He was always the trap guy, but that was just an extension of his role as the idea guy of the group. This is just a hypothesis though, I'm not going to go back and rewatch every Scooby-Doo property to see if I'm right. Daphne, yeah, she's as bland as I thought. There are references to what her character does off screen and in the school the gang apparently goes to, but on screen she's kind of just there. She isn't really given much opportunity to do things beyond make observations that basically anyone else could. At least Fred has his leadership skills to carry him from a utility point of view. Velma on the other hand is a bit interesting. Of the three characters without an S in front of their names, she has the most defined character, especially in how she can be used for jokes. Consider this, the idea of the gang splitting up is iconic, but the usual arrangements pair Scooby and Shaggy together so they can get up to comedic antics. And who's the person who's sometimes paired with them as well? Another thing I observed, and this is kind of because of the Velma show and certain comments that I guess are now just a permanent part of Scooby-Doo discourse, is the intelligence level of the characters. Bear with me on this one. Now, this might be because I just accidentally picked only episodes showcasing this, but I never got the impression that Velma was overwhelmingly the smartest one. Yes, you look at the gang, and if you had to single out the smart one, you'd probably pick her. She's definitely the most knowledgeable person on the team. But when it comes to solving mysteries, it's clearly a team effort, and more often than not, the rest of the gang is usually with her, or at least in the vicinity of whatever conclusion she comes up with. Genuinely, I think Velma has gotten smarter over the years, in the same way Fred has gotten more entertaining and less leaderly. Ironically, I'm not sure I would have picked up on this fact if it wasn't for the 2023 show and all the discourse. Honestly, the dynamics in this show are more balanced than I thought they'd be when it comes to the characters. Then again, even if it was made before my parents even met, the show was written by people, and writing can transcend things even greater than other qualities like animation. Speaking of animation, while the common joke about this show is that each episode had the budget of someone's lunch, one thing you can't knock about the show is its look. Between the set design and soundtrack, it could go for a really unique and spooky atmosphere if it really wanted to. I also want to give a shout out to my favorite chase sequence in the batch of episodes I watched. It's in Mystery Mask Mix-Up, the Chinatown episode. I like it because instead of the gang being chased on foot, it's a car chase. But that doesn't make it any less ridiculous than the usual chases they get involved in. Scooby-Doo Where Are You is by no means perfect. A lot of it is dated, but in that nostalgic way that can blind you to the flaws, especially if you grew up with it. But even acknowledging those flaws, it's not hard to see why it's had the effect it's had on the creation of copycat shows and the many iterations of the adventures of the Mystery Gang. I can see why this show was still on the air for me to watch in the mid-2000s when I first came across it. While its premise is formulaic, it's still designed in a way that can have a lot of variety and flexibility in what the gang encounters, which, even for a show that's known for being formulaic, means it's still unpredictable in its own way. I suppose of all the mysteries to solve, the popularity of this show isn't one of them. Yes, that's the joke I'm ending on. What do you think of the original Scooby-Doo? And what do you think of this video? Tell me in the comments and hit the like button and subscribe for more content while you're at it. Thank you and good day.